Jessica is a 9-year-old girl who went downstairs after trying to get ready in the morning and told her mother that she wanted to get rid of her nightgown because the tag was poking her. Her mother thought that it was strange, but didn't really know what to make of it, and sent her off to school. And a couple of hours later, Jessica's mother received a phone call from the school because Jessica was in a great deal of pain and was hunched over, shaking. And instinctively, Jessica's mother knew that there was something wrong. And the very first thought that she had, maybe not the first one, I'm adding a couple of details here and there from the article, was something is terribly wrong. She must have gotten bitten by a spider because they lived in a location in a part of the world where brown recluses were prevalent. And so she took her to the hospital. And by this point, Jessica had a fever, was nauseous, had chills, could barely stand, was very, very pale. And the nurse at the hospital and the intake people said that it was probably COVID or a virus. And Jessica's mother said, no, I think she's been bitten. Look, there's a little mark on her arm. And the ER people said, it's just a little pinch. We'll give you some antibiotics. And Jessica's mom knew that there was something off and that there was something wrong. But from the nurses and the doctor's perspective, they saw something different. Their narrative structure was something different. So now we have 3 narratives to explain objective reality. We have Jessica's, which is that a tag pinched her and she doesn't know why she's sick. We have Jessica's mom, who thinks it's a spider bite. And we have the ER staff who believe that it is a virus that is going around in the pandemic or something similar. But just in case, they also give antibiotics. They send everybody home. And over the course of the evening, Jessica continues to deteriorate. There was a, quote, terrifying amount of blood in the bathroom. She couldn't sleep. The pain was excruciatingly intense, and she was getting more and more ill by the hour. So Jessica's mom took her back to the hospital, where they confirmed that she had indeed been bitten by a brown recluse spider. And Jessica's life was on the line because she was facing almost a complete shutdown of her vital organs. Her blood cells were being destroyed. She had to have surgery. She had to have multiple doctors overseeing parts of her care. It was very, very, very serious. She made it out okay, and they saved her life. But what's fascinating about this story is that we see the interpreter function of our brains, and I've mentioned this before on other episodes, work by Dr. Gazzaniga. He is the neuroscientist who discovered this effect. And the interpreter function in our brains takes whatever we see in reality and it tries to superimpose a story about what's going on. And sometimes, and I've seen it in myself, it's incredible. Even after all of this awakening journey, it's amazing to watch my brain work and other people's as well, because I see it in my clients too. Sometimes the stories are so wrong. They are just absolutely furthest from the truth, which is why we revere medicine and science. Because before we had Western medicine and evidence-based treatments, we had doctors roaming around giving people leeches and doing bloodletting for everything from cholera to headaches to cancer to whatever it was. Because what they saw was something different than what we would end up being able to investigate and interrogate. But Modern day science does not have all of the answers, and in fact blinds us in very, very significant ways. Recently, I was doing investigation into the efficacy of a particular medicine, over-the-counter medicine, and it turns out that this medicine has almost virtually no difference in efficacy between it and a placebo. But what's fascinating is that you go to Reddit and you have a handful of people talking about how effective it is. And then you have a lot of other people saying that it isn't. My immediate thought is the etiology of what this helps is probably more complicated. When you understand science, you start to understand that the way data is pooled, and this was a meta study, the way data is pooled is that it takes a population of people and doesn't necessarily account for the origin and the type of disease or ailment that they have. It lumps them together, and then it will run this analysis and say it's no better than chance. So then doctors will make their judgments accordingly. And what's fascinating is that science sometimes gets it wrong. And this is an interesting case study that I believe that this medicine indeed does work for a subset of people. But that subset is really, really small. And so when you lump them together with other people, then the effect gets drowned out. So science is not be all end all, and it makes mistakes all the time. But logic and rational and evidence-based critical thinking gives us the opportunity to distance ourselves from our biases and look at reality objectively through the lens of what is the most probable explanation with all of the data that we have from this existing moment. And this is dovetailing into Dr. Donald Hoffman's work, who says that this is actually an illusion of reality because we are effectively in a box looking at quote-unquote reality and measuring it with the tools that we have, never seeing that the true nature of reality is actually extending beyond the box that we're presently in. He frames it a little differently, but it comes down to this, that we're stuck in a box. We are measuring the walls and we're saying, this is it. My golly George, we figured it out. And never understanding that there are actually multiple boxes. And space-time itself is a box. And there are very interesting things that happen when you step outside of space-time. So it allows us, Western medicine, rational thinking, scientific training allows us to understand what we can see and measure. But beyond that, it doesn't do as good of a job. And if there is something that we can see but not measure accurately because of the tools or the tests, then it also creates erroneous results. And this feeds into our narrative explanations. Let me give you another example before I continue this line of inquiry. I was watching a favorite creator who apparently, and this is a quantum creator, so they shift in time and interdimensionally travel and have a beat on that part of the world that extends beyond the materialist reductionist box that we're all used to. And this creator, apparently, while they were sleeping, had something happen that they couldn't explain. They woke up to their laptop soaking wet, a glass of water that was on the desk beside the bed, and they didn't get up in the middle of the night that they were aware of, and neither did their partner, and I don't think they had cats because it was unexplainable. But cats would do this, 100%. So she woke up to her laptop soaked with water, and somehow the glass had mysteriously fallen over. And her explanation for it was that somebody had done black magic on her, which I had a different explanation. I thought that she may have shifted dimensions while she was sleeping, quantum traveling, because she is a quantum traveler. But her default narrative was that somebody was out to get her and had done a spell to ruin her laptop. So they must have known that there was a glass of water there and that she would be sleeping and that she had a desk in her bedroom and all of these details, which to me, I mean, for you, probably not for you, but because many of you are also interdimensional travelers as well and open to reality shifting, even though we're not in that series at the moment. But for some people, that explanation is really far-fetched. And it's amusing because my explanation for others would be just unthinkable. But her explanation for me was also far-fetched. And the real reason, I don't know if we are ever going to know. But now let's tie it back into the recent world events where many people are having multiple conversations that people who have died have come back to life. And people who have already died were alive and just died again. And others who have been talking about these interesting characteristics of the sun and weather and things of that sort are noticing that it's like they're back where the sun is actually yellow and the clouds are normal. And many people have different explanations for it. Mandela effect, the evil scientist at CERN, a massive collective shift. And I think it's interesting because we are always, just like Jessica, who was taking off her nightgown and felt a pinch. Her mind deduced that it must be a tag. So she went downstairs and asked to give her nightgown away to Goodwill because the tag was bothering her. So she was dealing with the problem, but she was dealing with the wrong problem. The first doctors and nurses gave her antibiotics and a treatment protocol that was absolutely ineffective. They dealt with the problem all right. They dealt with the wrong problem. See, this is the issue with narratives, is that we can be highly trained, highly capable, materialist reductionists, ER doctors that are saving people's lives, and I'm sure that they went on to save many lives that day, and that this was just one mistake, one potentially deadly, life-threatening mistake that jeopardized this 9-year-old girl's health. And thank goodness the mother pursued and realized that something was not right and pushed again. So no discredit to them, because we all can make mistakes. But this is the problem when we're solving the wrong problems. When our narrative functions are mapping onto reality incorrectly, and we are none the wiser. This is why sometimes I think that we are a primitive class of species, to be honest with you. Because our cognitive functioning and the cognitive errors that we make, that I observe not only in myself but in other people, related to how we interpret reality and how we often get it wrong. But stick to our guns about it with a conviction and a degree that is quite frightening. I mean, they put up somebody on a cross a long time ago because of this. Because of this nature, this human nature, the dogmatic, holding on to these ideas. And to think that we could do that to another beautiful human being just because we don't agree or we don't understand what's going on. And we misinterpret reality to cause so much suffering to other beings is just unthinkable at a certain point of the consciousness expansion journey, which is why I believe that we're outgrowing our primitive nature, but we still have a while to go. So the way that this impacts us is that we take a set of experiences, let's just say a spiritual awakening. We take a set of experiences and we put it in a bucket, and then we collectively agree about the bucket. And then we produce teachers and educational material and sometimes propaganda. And it gets passed down to generation to generation to generation. And over time and space, it will change some. But let's just examine this critically for a moment. How is it possible that people who are seeking a spiritual awakening can do so for decades and not actually have ever a Kundalini experience or any sort of mystical experience that they're seeking, that they've heard about? And you contrast that to people like myself and others who were atheist scientists who spontaneously had a spiritual awakening when they weren't looking for it, they didn't believe in it, and they didn't ask for it. How does that happen? How can you have a class of people that are out there every day, or every week, doing yoga, doing meditation, going and reading consciousness expansion material, wanting to have a spiritual experience, and never having an actual intrinsic experience like a Kundalini awakening? And then you take somebody who doesn't even know what chakras are, doesn't read any books about spiritual awakening, period, so focused on other things, identifies as a non-believer and a non-seeker, and they, boom, have one. You see, these narratives and these buckets that we classify these experiences are really, really fascinating, because if we were to fast forward in time and have personalized medicine, nanotechnology that was hooked up to some sort of AI facilitation, Jessica, when she walked into the hospital, may have been delivered the correct treatment a lot sooner, right? With advanced technology and application of medicinal science, integrating with AI systems, she would have actually suffered less. And think about the other people that have died at those doctors' or other doctors' hands, who were none the wiser, because they were blinded by their own narratives and their own interpretations. They didn't mean to. Nobody does. They send people home who end up not doing well and taking a nosedive for the worst, and they don't make it back. It happens sometimes. Do you believe that we would be stronger as a society and as a species if we had that level of understanding? Or do you believe that we should actually revert all the way back to the bloodletting and leeches era of our society, where we disengage from technical advanced applications and we live in fear about them? And we tell doctors to go roam and have leeches as the first line treatment, because this is where we're starting from. The issue about narratives is that it allows room for error like that. Because when reality is objective, meaning Jessica didn't manifest a brown recluse bite, and her mother didn't either. And her mother also didn't manifest a misdiagnosis. So we need to accept that sometimes reality is not in our control, and that there are instances of us misinterpreting it that can lead to potentially devastating consequences. And I would ask you, if this is a faulty nature of human cognition, if this would warrant advanced application of technology like transhumanism, where we actually deeply understand what are the innate thought patterns, what are the actual symptoms versus what is the biochemistry telling us, and what are the biases of all of the people involved. This is just one example out of many. But you see, we are also afraid of stepping into, not everybody, but most people are very, very afraid to step into an enhanced society with advanced technology because of, guess what? The narratives and the propaganda that has been spewed about these subjects. You see, if you were to take us out of this box and insert us into another box where there hasn't been propaganda about transhumanism, things of that nature, you might have a completely different opinion. And so when you understand how powerful these narratives are at shaping people's behavior, fundamentally you understand just how primitive we are and susceptible we are to influence and to putting things in the wrong buckets, like perhaps a spiritual awakening.